Hey guys, welcome to the show. Subscribe, rate, and review. Tell a friend. My name, if you don't know me, is Keith Reza. I'm a stand up comedian. I'm very, very funny. I'm also a huge John Cusack fan. And this is my quest to interview him someday on my podcast called Reza Riffs. I want to be his best friend. So this is my quest. Welcome to the show. This is the opening remarks, and usually they have like a funny, catchy song. So I'm going to sing it to you. Ready? Okay. I'm searching. I'm searching. I'm searching for John Cusack. He's searching. He's searching. He's searching for John Cusack to do Reza riffs. Hey, thank you. That is the song. And once I get a bigger budget, we're going to get a band to sing it, and it's going to be fantastic. All right, guys, enjoy the first episode of Searching for John Cusack with Keith Reza. Enjoy. Hey, guys, welcome to the new show, Searching for John Cusack, a new podcast brought to you by me, Keith Reza. You could support me on the social media, Keith Reza, Reza, everywhere. I'm also on Cameo. And if you want to get more info on me, you could subscribe to my podcast, Reza, Reza, Riffs, everywhere. That's mostly comedy interviews and all that stuff. But this is a passion, a podcast of mine. For the folks at home who are just now tuning in, I am a stand up comedian, podcaster, writer, failed actor, or maybe I just haven't succeeded in acting yet. But the point is, I love John Cusack. He is my favorite actor, and I find all his work he does to be fascinating and just unique. And I always tell people when I do stand up comedy, I'm the John Cusack of stand up comedy. I just say anything. Anyways, this podcast is called Searching for John Cusack because one of my goals in my life is to interview John Cusack and to become his best friend. It's a very hard goal because, the restraining order is still in effect. Ha, ha, ha. Kidding. But it's a goal that's just hard to come by because, he always says no and all that stuff. But I am hoping with this podcast, it'll show him my admiration to change his mind. So if you like this podcast, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. And if you're a huge John Cusack fan, I think you'll love it. And yeah. So yeah, and if you know John Cusack, help us out. All right. So this is Searching for John Cusack, episode 1. So in today's guest, this is a segment from my interview that I did with her on Razor Riffs. Today's segment is from Nora Dunn, who starred in Runaway Jury with John Cusack, and she had a great scene with John Cusack. For the folks at home who haven't seen the movie, there's a little spoiler alert. I won't tell you the whole spoiler plot, but it did come out in 2003. So you guys are a little late to the times on this whole spoiler alert. But I want to respect everyone's views to see this movie. It also starred Gene Hackman, Rachel Weisz, and Dustin Hoffman, and of course, John Cusack's sidekick, Jeremy Piven. This was one of many movies they did together, but mostly about Runaway Jury. The plot. I will tell you the plot. So it's about a trial that is going for gun control, right? This wife, she's suing the gun companies because a guy went into her husband's work and he killed him, right? And he's like, ah. And he took away her husband and her son's, I think it was a son, her son's uh father, her child's father, son, daughter, doesn't really matter. I Obviously, I wasn't paying attention to that part of the movie because John Cusack wasn't in that part of the movie. But that's what happened. So then the lady sues the gun company, right? And she hires Dustin Hoffman, right, to be her lawyer, right? And then the gun companies hired Bruce Davidson, who's their lawyer, but they're selecting jurors like a CIA hidden camera type of thing, right? And the gun company hired Gene Hackman, right? And they select jurors and they like find everything they need to know about jurors, you know what I mean? And John Cusack plays uh, Nicholas Easter, who's a juror, right? He's on the juror and he becomes the runaway jury, they say, because in the whole movie, John Cusack has an ace up his sleeve, right? He wants the gun company to lose, but he also wants money. So he and his girlfriend, played by Rachel Weisz, they like do a little plot twist of conspiracies against both sides, right? To sell a juror, right? And there's 12 jurors, right? So they're like manipulating each juror and all the suspense and action and all that stuff. And John Cusack, the great John Cusack, has a great scene with Nora Dunn. Nora Dunn, she's a great actress, stand-up comedian. You probably know her best from SNL, but she played Stella Hulick in Runaway Jury. And in this scene, right, John Cusack is trying to make a stomp on that he could pull a jury. He could make them lose a jury. And Nora Dunn was a jury that the gun company, Gene Hackman, said, hey, we want her because she's going to vote go guns, right? So in this scene, John Cusack goes up to Nora Dunn, right? And he says, oh, man, I don't know word for word of it. You know what I mean? I'm sure you could YouTube it or rent Runaway Jury. But this is just the back stock of it. John Cusack goes up to Nora Dunning and says, oh man, I was up all night. Oh, And his eyes are red and stuff. And Nora Dunn's like, yeah, she's acting like suspicious, like why is this guy now noticing I'm the beautiful mountain on the steam, And then John Cusack says, because John Cusack noticed that she liked to drink a little, and you can't do that in a courtroom, So then John Cusack says, "Oh man, I could really use some pick me up, if you know what I mean." And Nora Dunn says, "Ooh, you want a little sour for the coffee? Make that coffee sweet." She says something like that. And then John Cusack says, yeah, that would be amazing, right? So then Nora Dunn takes a bottle of brandy, right? And or scotch or something, some alcoholic drink, and she tries to pour it in John Cusack's coffee, and John Cusack takes it, right? And she's like, "No, let me pour it." He's like, I want to pour it, right? And then he takes it, and then he purposely drops the bottle and he slides it all the way to the plaintiff, the sheriff, right? And the sheriff notices it. And then you think, as an audience, oh shit, John Cusack's going to get kicked off this jury, right? So then John Cusack goes to talk to the judge, right? And the judge says, hey, I didn't think you were a day drinker, Mr. Easter, right? He said that. And John Cusack says, usually I'm not, but let's get the party started, something like that. And then, so he's trying to get it kicked off the jury because at this time, it makes you seem like John Cusack just wants to get off this jury. Like you don't know he's in it. You know what I mean? He just wants to get kicked off. That's what makes it seem like with the movie magic. And then the judge says, well, as much as I'd like to believe you're a boozaholic, uh, what's this lipstick doing on it? Because there's lipstick on the thing. And that's where Nora Dunn got in trouble and she got kicked off the jury. And then Nora Dunn leaves and she's crying, right? And then they put in another jury, one who's not for gun control. So that was the big scene. Nora Dunn was in about maybe 15 minutes of the movie. She had two scenes. one big scene with John Cusack. And, you're going to hear what it was like working with John Cusack from the great Nora Dunn. All right, guys. If you liked this, please subscribe, rate, review on Apple Podcasts. Tweet it to John Cusack. Let's get him to hear this, how much we love him, and all that stuff. And also, you could listen to the full episode with Nora Dunn on my podcast, Reza Riffs. I will put it in the link. It's going to be swell. And like I said, this is just like a 5 to 10 minute little fan thing for me. So, yeah, I'm very excited. Welcome to episode 1 of Searching for John Cusack with Keith Reza. Enjoy the show. One last question for you, and I asked this question with everyone who's ever worked with this person. The segment's called Searching for John Cusack. And I wanted to know in your words, what was it like working with the great JC?
I had a really good scene with him.
Oh yeah,
You know what's interesting about him? He's shy.
yeah,
He travels with like these real close kind of buddies because he's always been in film since he was like 16. And there's something about him that his presence on screen shows it's kind of a loneliness in a way, which
yeah.
plays through in his work. But he's also funny and engaging, but he's sort of a kid. And we had that one scene together, and the best part of our scene was the space he creates. Like he understands that it's not the words, it's the space that you build around them. And that's really one of my favorite scenes I've ever had. And the director came up and told me, I teach that scene to my students
Wow, that's
because
awesome.
Cusack takes his time. Have you ever seen him in a scene where he's rushing through it? No.
No,
And he's so funny in Grosse Point Blank, that one of my favorite movies. But he has something that nobody else has.
he has like a really quick wit. I saw him live in concert, and he was doing a Q&A, and this lady, she might have been a stalker. I don't know. Like worse than me, I guess. And then she got on, she's like, John, in every single movie you talk on the cell phone. And I just want to know, why do you do that in every single movie? And John's like, I don't do that in every single movie. She's like, no, I'm your biggest fan. You do it in every single movie. And then he's like, oh, did you ever see the Wild Bill? And she's like, no. He's like, well, it's a Western. And it got like the biggest, like
Yeah.
the biggest, you know what I mean? Biggest laugh of the night. And I was like,
Yeah.
dude, this guy is funny. You know what I mean?
Art, and he's got a wit.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that little juicy spice about working with John Cusack from Nora Dunn on Runaway Jury. If you want to listen to the full episode, you can subscribe to my main podcast, Reza Riffs, with Nora Dunn. Like I said, that is from that episode, and I just snipped it into this. So that's the end of the segment. And usually at the end of the segment, what I want to do is I want to read or play voicemails of stories from you guys, the listeners, if you've ever met John Cusack. I didn't get any for the first episode, so I'm not off to a good start. But I have a feeling that it's going to pick up and you guys are going to share some amazing things. Um, but there are a couple rules with this segment, and I have to be 100% clear. Uh, there's actually 4 rules. Rule number 1, it must be 100% true. You can't just make up a John Cusack story, send it in, and say, hey, Keith Reza is going to put it in searching for John Cusack. So we'll have all these myths and stuff. It must be true, and it must be a reliable source. So if John Cusack ever listens to this, he could be like, oh, yeah, that was true. Number two, it cannot be negative whatsoever towards JC or slandering. So if it's a story and say he had a bad day, right? Because we all have bad days, and say it just wasn't nice or whatever. It can't be negative. You can't say that. That's not going to make the podcast, you know? You can't say anything mean or bad about John Cusack. Just remember, if you did have a bad experience, we're all human and we all have bad days. But if you share a bad experience, it will not make this podcast. Only good experience, positive experience about John Cusack. Which brings me to rule number 3. It must be a positive experience. And I say that again because it must be positive. Like a positive example experience is if you met John Cusack at the Coffee Bean and you said, "Hey, I met John Cusack at the Coffee Bean, and I could tell you that he likes to drink coffee at the Coffee Bean." That's a positive experience. It's a sighting. You saw him at the Coffee Bean, and we know he likes coffee at the Coffee Bean. That was just an example. I did not see John Cusack at the Coffee Bean. I don't even know if he likes coffee. It was an example, but it was a positive example. All right. And then rule number 4, it must not be longer than a minute. Must be 60 seconds tops. Quick, to the point, fun, positive. If it's past a minute, I might get bored. Anyways, if you're interested, you could follow me on social media at Keith Reza, KEITHREZA, and you could DM me, and I will give you a number to call, and you call that number, and you leave a voicemail of your experience or your story with John Cusack, and I will put it on Searching for John Cusack with Keith Reza. All right, guys. I hope you enjoy this episode. Remember, subscribe, tell a friend. And if you're a big John Cusack fan like me, share, tell the world. And we'll see you guys next time on Searching for John Cusack with Keith Reza, Reza, Reza.